Thanksgiving at the Tappletons by Eileen Spinelli. Illustrated by Marianne Cacao. Lefter?
Mom, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Ooh, nice counting.
Or not.
Okay, let's see what happens at
man,
Thanksgiving at the Tappletons. Fourth juror who made my wishbone wish come true. In memory of Uncle Dan, Noni, and Grandpa. Love, Marianne. Are you serious right now?
Threw up camera.
Thanksgiving at the Tappletons was always a big day. Thanksgiving at Tappletons meant, of course, the Tappleton family. Mr. Tappleton, Mrs. Tappleton, Jenny Tappleton, Kenny Tappleton, and Grandmother and Grandfather Tappleton, and Aunt Hedda and Uncle Fritz, and most certainly, of course, the turkey and the trimmings.
Let me see it. What one's yours?
It was still dark when Mrs. Tappleton lit the oven.
Stop it. I haven't.
Is this how you guys want to be in my video?
Kai, Mom's putting this on YouTube.
It was still dark when Mrs. Tappleton lit the oven and took the big turkey out of the refrigerator. Just then, someone knocked at the kitchen door. It was Mike, the milkman. Good morning, Mrs. Tappleton.
Now do you remember this book?
I thought you might like some eggnog for the holiday. As Mrs. Tappleton reached for the eggnog, the turkey slipped from under her arm. Now, on a warmer day, this might not have been a problem, but this Thanksgiving day was quite cold and the step was covered with ice. Before she or Mike could even think, the turkey had slithered into the yard. "Get it!" shouted Mrs. Tappleton. Mike reached out, but the turkey skidded past him through the gate and into the street. "Hurry!" screamed Mrs. Tappleton. "Stop that turkey!"
The lost turkey from Bait and Booty.
The milkman chased the turkey, Mrs. Tappleton chased the milkman, and the turkey slid down the hill into the pond. Plop, splash, it bubbled out of sight. When Mr. Tappleton came down to breakfast, he took a long sniff.
They're twins.
"I don't smell turkey," he said to his wife. "Of course you don't smell turkey," she replied. "You have a cold." "I don't have a cold," he insisted. "Achoo!" Mrs. Tappleton shook some pepper in the air. Her husband sneezed. "See?" she said, "you do have a cold."
He's weird.
After breakfast, Mr. Tappleton put on his coat and scarf and hat and gloves.
He has a cold.
"I'm going to the bakery to buy our pies." Mrs. Tappleton handed him his boots. "Wear these," she said. "I know for a fact it's quite slippery out today." Sim's bakery was so crowded the line reached out to the sidewalk. Mr. Tappleton hated to wait in long lines, so he went to the diner for a cup of coffee. By the time he got back, the long line was gone, and so were the pies. No pumpkin, no mince, no rhubarb, nothing. Mr. Tappleton was afraid to go home with nothing. "2 boxes tied up with string, please," he said. Miss Sims stared at him. "You mean 2 empty boxes?"
For what?
"That's right." "My, these feel light," remarked Mrs. Tappleton. "Certainly they are light," reported Mr. Tappleton. "Mrs. Simmons prides herself on how light her pies are."
Mom, that's school bell.
You hear that? Mrs. Tappleton set the table. She called to her son. "Kenny, you may make the salad. There's lettuce in the crisper and carrots and radishes too." Kenny's face grew pale. Just yesterday he had emptied the crisper and fed all the vegetables to the rabbits in Mr. Butterworth's class. How could he tell his mother he couldn't? So he covered the empty salad bowl with aluminum foil. Malachi. So
they had pickles and applesauce and sandwiches. No, they had pickles and sandwiches and applesauce for dessert.
So he covered the empty salad bowl with aluminum foil and stuck it back in the refrigerator. My oh my, is this family an honest family? Huh?
My oh my.
When the others went to pick up...
What?
When the others went to pick up the relatives at the train station, Jenny stayed behind to mash the potatoes. Every year, this was her job. She loved it. This year, she thought, I'll make them extra better. I'll use the blender. Just as Jenny flicked on the switch, the phone rang, and it was her best friend, Nora. If there was one thing Jenny loved to do better than mashed potatoes, it was talk. Jenny talked and talked and talked to Nora, and she might still be talking today, had not a wet glump of something hit her in the back of the head. She turned to see what it was. Splat! Another glump hit her in the face. The blender was going wild, and mashed potatoes were flying everywhere. Without even saying goodbye to Nora, Jenny hung up the phone, scrubbed her face, and wiped mashed potatoes from nearly everything in the kitchen. She finished just as the others came back. Uncle Fritz patted his stomach. I'm hungry, he said. Grandfather Tappleton laughed. I'm as hungry as an elephant. Everyone sat down at the table. It was a Tappleton tradition for a grandmother to say the Thanksgiving prayer. As soon as the turkey is ready, she smiled. I'm as hungry as 2 elephants, said Grandfather. Mr. Tappleton went to the oven. I'll carve the turkey now. He opened the oven door.
And, oh no, where's the turkey?
The turkey is gone! Mr. Tappleton searched on the table and under the table and in every kitchen cabinet. He looked into the sink and in the broom closet. I can't find the turkey anywhere.
It went out the window.
Mrs. Tappleton took a deep breath. Take a deep breath. She told them how their fine turkey had slipped out the door and down the steps and across the yard and through the gate and down the street and plop, splash, into the pond. So much for the turkey, said Uncle Fritz, and his stomach rumbled a little louder. Never mind, said Aunt Hedda good-naturedly. Never mind, said Aunt Hedda good-naturedly. We'll fill up on the trimmings.
What's trimmings? What's trimmings?
Like the side dishes, mashed potatoes. Uh-oh. I'll get the salad, Jenny announced. Then Grandmother can say the prayer. Jenny set the bowl on the table and peeled off the aluminum foil. Everyone stared at the salad that was not there. I fed the rabbits at school, confessed Kenny. Uncle Fritz looked downright gloomy. So much for the salad. His stomach rumbled again. I'm as hungry as 3 elephants, sighed Grandfather.
Bad, Grandfather. Think about food every day.
Kenny jumped up. Well, have Jenny's mashed potatoes. He brought the pot from the kitchen and lifted the lid. I was on the phone, and Jenny meekly, and the blender went wild. So much for the potatoes. Uncle Fritz's stomach rumbled even more. I'm as hungry as 4 elephants, Grandfather declared. The pies! Cried Mrs. Tappleton. I'll get the pies. I'll say grace as soon as the pies are cut, Grandmother smiled. Mrs. Tappleton brought in the boxes, set them down, and untied the string. You brought home 2 empty boxes? She glared at Mr. Tappleton, who covered his ears. 5 5 elephants, groaned Grandfather. The dining room was quiet. Everyone looked down at the empty table.
Pickles, sandwiches, and peanut butter. Pickles, sandwiches, and applesauce for dessert.
Uncle Fritz muttered something, but it could not be heard above the rumble of his stomach. A tear rolled down Jenny's cheek. "No Thanksgiving dinner," she sniffed. "Nothing to say a prayer for," sighed Kenny.
You're stepping on it.
Grandmother smiled. "Of course there is something. There is more to Thanksgiving than a turkey and trimmings." And then Grandmother Tappleton asked everyone to bow their heads and hold hands around the dining room table. And this is the Thanksgiving prayer she said. "Turkeys come and turkeys go, and trimmings can be lost, we know. But we're together, that's what matters, not what's served upon the platters. Amen." "That was a wonderful prayer," said Aunt Hedda.
They're the same mouse. They're twins. They're twin mouse. They have twin mouths. And they have twin mouths too.
Okay. Well, it is the same illustrator.
And they have the twin hair.
You've noticed that the illustrator uses similar artistic skills on each person. "That was a wonderful prayer," said Aunt Hedda. Mrs. Tappleton jumped up.
We can have sandwiches, pickles, and applesauce for dessert. And pickles too.
"We have liverwurst and cheese in the refrigerator. I'll help fix the sandwiches," offered Mr. Tappleton. Jenny wiped her tear away. "I'll get the pickles." Kenny laughed. "I'll open a jar of applesauce for dessert."
A jar of applesauce for dessert. Pickles, sandwiches, applesauce.
And so, the Tappletons had their Thanksgiving dinner after all. Uncle Fritz's stomach stopped rumbling, and Grandfather Tappleton ate enough liverwurst to feed 6 elephants. In fact, everyone had plenty to eat.
This is peanut butter.
But most of all, they had each other.
Mom, wait, is this...
Okay, the end. Thanks for reading.
That's not the same picture as I thought it was. But where's the turkey at? I don't know. See, oh, turkey. They're all smiling the same. Look at Grandma. And then look at Grandma. Now, twin mouth. Twin mouth, smile.